are back. This is AR's Tales, aka the A.R.T podcast. I am A.R. Bond, and today I am joined by Sean Bell, author of the coming soon Grandfather Chronicles. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing very well. How are you today, Angel?
Oh, I am outstanding and improving. Now, where can the people find you? The Instagram, the website. I'm gonna have all of this up on the website, on the video itself.
Excellent.
On the on panels and everything for visual for the people watching.
Sure.
For the people listening.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you?
So the best place to start, Angel, is www.thegrandfatherchronicles.com. That's my webpage. That is the webpage that I will be using for the entire trilogy of the books. We're going to be talking a little bit about book one, which is coming soon, but the Grandfather Chronicles website will chronicle everything to do with the book trilogy. You can also follow the journey at the Grandfather Chronicles on Facebook as well as Instagram. And I'm always live at Sean, Seanr Bell, author on Twitter. I'm always there. I'm always interacting. I'm happy to talk about the book and about projects that are going on out there as well to do with fantasy and science fiction. So I'm more than willing to connect, and it's going to be an awesome ride.
Yeah, definitely. You are actually, speaking of Twitter, you're actually a publishing partner, publishing peer of P.L. Stuart, who is a great friend to the podcast, great friend of mine personally, just has a phenomenal spirit in the Twitter sphere, and as well as just an author and fantasy and everything he's doing, really.
Yeah, PL, I have to say, I had the wonderful opportunity, Angel, to have an actual Zoom call with him. And I spoke with him in large about his book, about his journey, my journey. The incredible similarity between both of us, Angel, is that we both came up through Friesen Press. So we both have a lot of stories we can share about our experiences coming through that self-publishing industry. But I can't say enough about PL. He's actually one of the advocates who really suggested I get on Twitter, start, pumping the book, what's coming, a little bit about who I am as an individual, so that when the book is released, people already have an idea of who I am. He was a big part of that, and he continues to be a wonderful supporter of mine. And one of the things I'm hoping to do is be such a large supporter to him. But just having the opportunity to see his energy on screen and his knowledge of what he's been through has really helped inspire me to keep going, to really keep getting out there and really making myself and the book itself available, and using everything I can to just help bring the book and myself to life in social media and on Twitter. So I'm so happy to hear he's a wonderful friend of yours. He's definitely becoming a friend of mine.
Oh yeah, I've had PL on many a Zoom call, many a chat. He's a great spirit, and he's really, really funny, honestly, when you kind of get past the professional rudimentary, just like, oh yeah, we're both also authors doing the same thing. When you just get down to shop and you start talking, he's a funny guy.
And that was something I think that I was so impressed with, was that he was able to we just had a conversation. We just sat there and kind of discussed our journeys, and all of a sudden we were 2-3 hours into the call, and it's the first call of many. He wrote me an incredible little note in his book that he sent me, Drowned Kingdom, and I've just started reading that. I'm glued to that, so I've started reading that. And just his words of encouragement, Angel, on the cover just have really helped kind of push me through this final kind of stage as we get ready for the release of my book, which is quite exciting, but it's a little bit nerve-wracking. And having someone there to kind of guide me a little bit through it has really been a great blessing.
Yeah, I'm actually on the exact same boat. Not to kind of take light away from yours.
Not at all.
But I am on the exact same path you are on. Allegory of the End, Volume 1. I just on Friday got my editor's revisions back, and I'm tearing through it now. Hopefully I'll be done with that, and then from there it's onto formatting and release by end of June, just to give myself a month of formatting, getting a couple additions on my side, marking it up, doing sweepstakes, doing all the things that are necessary in order to get the advertisement up, which is really 80% of the game nowadays. It really is not it's not a meritocracy as it once was, where the best voices are the ones that are going to shine. It really is the ones that have the highest weight behind them, especially with, you know, the big three in the publishing houses doing everything they can to keep reins of their empire within the Amazon sphere, and everything that they're doing, whether it is good or not, is dependent on, you know, the perception of the individual, but the effects that it has on us is undoubted. And just feeling all that pressure is, I'm 100% with you. I'm 100% empathetic, and it's almost such a bittersweet feeling because it is the closest. I'm not a father yet, but it is the closest thing that I can empathize with being a father. It is, you walk this thing, you teach it how to breathe, you teach it everything. You bring it from nothing, a blank canvas on Word document, and you just start filling it with words, and then however amount of times later you have this passion project. And it is not for the weak-hearted. There are thousands of authors coming, and new ones coming every single day, but not, I can only imagine the amount of authors that have half a manuscript on their laptop.
Yeah, you touch on some unbelievable points, Angel. There's no question. I agree with you. This is like our baby. You spend so much time crafting it, so much time editing it, so much time making sure that it's a true representation of what you want it to be, that it is a little bit overwhelming from time to time. The one thing I was very blessed with, and the one thing I've kind of held true going through the entire process, as take it one step at a time. Although it can seem overwhelming, especially when something new is introduced, a new step is introduced, the thing I have found that has helped get me to where I'm at and over the finish line is to stay organized and go one step at a time. There's going to be, it's not a perfect process. You have to be prepared for things that are going to go wrong. You have to be prepared for suggestions that you may not agree with at the time, but as you think about them and as you evaluate them, they become important to the overall polish of your finished product. Definitely. So I definitely, I hear where you're coming from. No question. I think when I started on this experience, I definitely didn't take into consideration at the time the monumental time that has to be spent on advertising and social media. It is the essence of how your product is going to get out to the world. And I spend my hours when I can researching, doing courses, doing tutorials, doing anything I can to learn more about marketing with respect to an online presence. There's so much out there to use, and to be able to learn it all is truly a gift, and that's something I'm still working towards. So you spend all this time creating this wonderful project. I'll call it, to what you said, like your baby, and then you really have to get your baby out there, and that in itself is a huge undertaking. But it's fun if you take it one step at a time. It's a fun experience. Enjoy that experience. Through all the things that I've seen over the years, with a load of background that I have in media and producing and pitching to companies, you sometimes forget about the enjoyment of being successful or starting down that path because you're so concerned about the end result. I'll say something that my mom said to me: enjoy the journey. And that's the thing I think I still have to try and learn today, is enjoy that journey.
Man, I have to agree with you so much. And actually, to quote my one of my favorite movies, Dazed and Confused. It's in the scene when they're in the car and they're talking about their lives. It's actually when the tryhards are kind of, you know, de-stressing and decompressing after their years of high school, of all the drama, of everything that you've done. And specifically the tryhards are, like, you know, aka the nerds, or the people that spent most of their time in academia instead of, you know, getting laid or XYZ and all the other antics of the movie, right? Well, the movie highlights. And they're talking about how all their life they've always felt this pressure to work towards something, and that the present was this just superfluous presence that had no meaning to the relation all it was a stepping stone in order to this future aspiration, to this future whatever it was. And they were just like reflecting how they never actually took a time to just be in that moment, instead of always working toward using that moment as a stepping stone to something that they can't even see yet. And I can't tell you how much that quote just reflects over all my life, and specifically with this journey. I can't tell you how much, well, I can tell you in length the amount of stress that you put yourself under. And you know, I've taken the time, it's that I can edit my book down from, like, I don't know, probably like 2 months down to like a couple days. That's stress.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. That's well done, though. That's well done. You're working your way at it. You're chipping away at it. Like I've always said to my mom, you've got to chip, you've got to chip away at these things. You're not going to accomplish it one day, 1 week. The biggest influencer behind my book, my grandfather, always said to me, patience, the P word, be patient. Let things come to you. Be patient. Don't rush things. And that's something I still practice today.
Yeah. Now, I would like to elaborate on something that you keep on referencing. It's the come up, the start of this. Bring me back however many years. What was the start of writing? What brought your love out in literature and reading, whatever it was? What was the first time that you woke up and said, hey, you know what, this is something that I want to do, even if it's at the, you know, corner musician level with a banjo and a little case open and somebody giving you money. It's something you have to do out of passion. It's not even out of money or anything else driving you. It is just love of the sport.
Absolutely. I have to reflect back to many, many, many years ago. I have been on a path that has not been a straight one. I've strayed to different professions. I've tried different things. But I'll tell you, Angel, the one thing that has stayed true for the entire journey is my imagination. I remember as a kid, I was in love with mythology, whether it was Greek mythology, whether it was Egyptology. I loved just the idea of this other world, this other civilization, and what they did. Just the stories.
And what we don't know.
And what we don't know. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's kind of, you touch on a great point. That's where my imagination kind of took over.
Yeah.
I would go to bed at night thinking about, wow, what if like Jason and the Argonauts, conquering the Hydra, like all these different mythologies that are out there, Medusa, the Gorgon Medusa, turning men to stone, like all these different stories. And my imagination would just take over, because as a kid, part of me didn't want to admit to the fact that it's a myth. Could this actually be real? Could these things exist? And I think that's what started my love of the creativity, the ability to be able to watch these or read these incredible stories and come up with my own renditions for them in my head. And a lot of it started as just dinner talk. I would just be sitting around and I'd come up with this idea. Hey, what would happen if, for example, the Gorgon Medusa was real? What if she was living in, say, some aquatic amusement park or something, right? But make it real. Come up with these ideas that mix fantasy with reality. Yes. Bring this myth to life. And I think I would go to bed at night I remember these as a kid, going to bed at night thinking about these wonderful, wonderful stories and saying to myself, how could you make that real? And the answer to making them real is to write them, because when you write them, you can make them real. And I think that's where it started for me. Was I was always told, write something every day, whether it's just a sentence, whether it's a paragraph, whether it's a word, something that reflects on your experiences that day. So I can honestly, it's a great question, Angel, and I can honestly tell you, it started all those years ago reading Greek mythology with my grandma.
Now, I love that on many different levels. One, I'll tell you right now, the reason for this podcast was what you just said about, dinner talk, as you say, because as I'm sure you have experienced, you say that, and then 15 minutes in, you get the eyes of like, yo, we're still talking about this? This is the thing we're talking about right now. Why don't we talk about sports or weather or fucking politics, some shit that we can't control for whatever reason, but we're going to spend our time talking about that because that's like politically accepted. Yeah, that's the reason you get into this, because you just kind of get tired of like, it's like, oh yeah, wait a minute. And it's why Twitter and like social media is also much as something that I neglected for so many years, but you really get to connect with your kin. And you're down, you can talk to people that are not only willing to talk to you about those subjects, but are willing to go hours and hours and hours on Discord about it and take the subject just as seriously as you do. And like, and the same passion that you have, they can reflect it like a mirror. And there is nothing more just beautiful about that. I mean, it's the reason why humans like art. I think it goes back to a quote. I can't remember who said it right now, but it's all selling, and that goes to if you're selling an iPhone, or if you're selling, if you're an art collector trying to get this piece off at whatever auction, you're selling an emotion. You're not selling an item. If you're able to truly convey an emotion to somebody, that's all it is. You're selling thunder in a bottle. Lightning in a bottle. I'm sorry, thunder in a bottle. That wouldn't make sense. Although you put it to your, but for the most part, you're selling something that is fleeting, and that's the beauty of it, because you have to revisit in order to get those emotions. I think it's why people love rewatching TV shows or rewatching movies, because it's something that you automatically know. Okay, that Breaking Bad emotion, I can hit that button anytime I want to watch Breaking Bad. Oh, that Matrix emotion, I can hit that button whenever I want. And again, I think, to go to your point about mythology, there is no button that reared its head to me more than that when I was younger. I think that is actually the start of my thing too. And I think subconsciously, because I didn't know it was related to writing or anything like that, I didn't have somebody pushing me in that direction at all throughout my life. Like, I didn't even think of writing. Yeah, no one ever told me about writing ever. It was just something that I dabbled in when I was in my late 20s. Well, late 20s. I'm not even late 20 yet. It was like when I was like 21, 22, around there. But for the most part, mythology was at home. It was the first time my brain ever, like, who liked school? I wasn't that person. That was the first time that my grades ever shot up. It was D's everywhere, and then B's getting to A's for history. That was my shit. There was nothing more thrilling than that. And to bring in that whole subconscious author part is that when you start hearing those histories, you start hearing these myths, your brain immediately goes into two places. One, how to rationalize it. And two, you easily, anybody, it doesn't even take that much of a critical mind to start poking holes in the story that you're hearing. And those holes have to be filled by somebody. And that's when your imagination comes over. It's like, oh, how did this happen? This is why. Now, I have a very technical mind. So when you start talking to me about mermaids, I'm like, all right, well, there's the Nat Geo theory saying that humans and Pangea were originally gorillas, or, whatever you want to call it. And we started off in the center. And as we migrated to the beaches, there were a portion of us that were like, hey, we like the beach. And there were another portion of us that said, like, hey, no, we're going to keep and stay in the jungles. And the part that stayed in the jungles stayed as monkeys, stayed as gorillas, stayed as whatever you want to call it. And the section that stayed at the beach became humans. Our backs are erected because we started going into the waters. The hair, we became naked, except for our head, because that's the only place that we would need hair in order to not get sunburned while we were in the water. Our hands became slightly more webbed, as well as our feet, in order to actually be able to go. We lost all the hair in order so we're not weighed down while we're swimming. Lung capacity grew so we can go under, all the things that needed to evolve into that, go into that. Now you take that theory and expand it a little bit further. Why couldn't a section then go like, hey, you know what? We actually like the water.
That's right.
And then go on down into the mermaid aspect. And then you have all these theories and stories from Greek sailors talking about that they saw mermaids, and who's to say they weren't?
That's right. Agreed. I agree with you.
It's one of my favorite things, and especially when you go into the ocean, and we're talking about the ocean, that's 70% undiscovered. We're fucking around with Mars, and we have 70% of the ocean undiscovered.
It's a big number. It's a big number. It's a huge number.
Yeah.
And I think you know, one of the things you touch on there, Angel, I just want to weigh in, is that I think to be a fantasy writer, you have to be open to what these things you're saying. You have to be open to the possibility that there's more out there that's been proven, more out there that's physically put in front of you. One of the things I think I love is that I have theories on everything, and there's nothing wrong with it, because there's, like, as you mentioned, I'll come back to what you mentioned, 70% of the ocean is undiscovered. That says a lot. That's a big, big number. And that just says to me that the evolution of mankind is a wonderful thing, but we're constantly looking to try and explain the world we live in. There are unexplained things that are out there. And I think the fantasy world gives us an opportunity to escape into a world that we thought might exist. And that's why I love it. That's why I love it, because there's no rules. There's not someone saying, no, that's been proven, it's wrong. The fantasy world allows you to escape into a world where you believe something can be possible.
Man, and I love that explanation so much, because I feel like it just kind of gave myself validation. Because I do science fiction fantasy. So to me, it is trying to tread that line. It's trying to bridge those worlds, right? It's trying to, how fantastical can we go while still being in the realm of possibility scientifically?
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
You know, like, I don't know how much of a fan you are of science, but I think one of my favorite things that I came up with in a fantasy term was an idea called hard light. Now, hard light, there is a proposed atomic theme. I don't even know the word to think. It's called the Higgs boson. Now, supposedly, this is what the God particle is. It's responsible for distributing mass to atoms in the universe. Pretty big deal. Otherwise, atoms would just be crashing into one another with no stop and go. It would just be chaos. Or actually the reverse of it, because, technically entropy is the reason why we exist, but whatever. So what I was playing around with was like, all right, imagine if you found a way to manipulate this Higgs boson and give mass to light. So drastically reducing its speed, but giving it a tangibility. So then I was playing around with the idea that, like, all right, we'll take this a little bit further, and you now have tangible light. So their highways are made of tangible light and can be flexed and contoured to whatever direction they want. Their barriers are made of hard light, and even be distributed to allow certain matter and not allow certain matter. So, for example, if you get into a car crash, you can pass by their barrier, no problem. But then everything that's metal, anything that's, with an engine core that can explode, stays within the opposite side of the barrier. And these type of things are just, it's one of those things that is my favorite distinction between science fiction and fantasy, because all the thing that's missing from that being straight fantasy is that I just told you all that bullshit about the Higgs boson.
That's it, exactly, right? Because people want physical proof it can happen, right?
That's
it's so true.
If I just told you there's this thing that exists, it feels like tangible light, that would just be fantasy.
That's right.
That would be 100% as far away from science fiction as you can consider it. I add that little paragraph of Higgs boson, and now we're in a different genre.
Exactly. It's well said. I really respect that. I think that's one of the best explanations I've heard in a long time, Angel. Thank you for that. And it's my two favorite genres are science fiction and fantasy. And you've actually shed some light on that for me today, because you're right. It's so easy to flip one from one to the other just based on your explanation a second ago there, right? If you've got a little bit of an explanation, it becomes fact. If you take that away, it becomes fantasy. So it's a fine line, but I believe that it's okay to cross that fine line.
Yeah,
it's okay to do that.
Yeah,
I think as kids, we're all taught, you're trying to find your place in the world. You're trying to find your direction. You're trying to find this road they want to put you on at a school. And what I talk to colleagues of mine about is I say it's okay to weave sometimes into other lanes. You don't have to stay on that path forever. And my journey has been an incredible one, filled with heartbreak, filled with joy, but it's been a tremendous learning experience because I've allowed myself to veer from lane to lane. I've been able to dabble in different areas and taken from those areas what I think is knowledgeable and worthwhile to use elsewhere. No experience is a bad experience if you can take something from it. So I really have been able to learn from these different paths I've been on, but ultimately, Angel, it's converged now into this single path, this ability to that I've got something to say. I have such an imagination. I have such an appreciation for the genres itself, both science fiction and fantasy, that I want to be a part of that. And Twitter's helped me be a part of that. The wonderful people I've met, wonderful people like yourself, people on Twitter who've helped explain to me how the genre works, has just made me, has kind of helped me embrace this opportunity that I'm using my voice and I'm talking about something that I think I've spent most of my life working out these stories and these ideas, because every element of this trilogy I've created touches on an aspect of my life, where I've been and how I've come here. So I really think that just the ability to be open to the world around you has allowed me to create something that if I'd stayed on those straight paths we talked about, I would never have gotten there. It's important to be able to change lanes and know that you're changing lanes because you want more or something different.
My God. I mean, I love that so much. Just to get a little bit of my background, I have a background in engineering.
Okay.
That's what I went to school for. I didn't get my major in English. I didn't go down that path at all. It wasn't what I had planned out for myself whatsoever. It really was like, I guess any serial killer would tell you, it was an obsession that eventually had to come to fruition at some point. And, you know, pardon me for bringing back just like my book, but it's just like, so like enthralled in my head. I love the idea that you use so much of your own character development, if you want to put it that way, and
Absolutely.
just reflected it in the book. Now, it's one of those things that if you were to read my book and I were to give you this explanation, you'd be like, oh, really? But in essence, what my book is about is miscommunication between friends. And I took that from my own experiences. Right when I got to college, I had this best friend that I had known almost all my life, except we went to different high schools. I moved down to Florida while he stayed up in the north. But we converged for college and we became roommates. And we fell out within months of living with one another. Now, I guess you can, therapist wise, I mean, you can work out just like that whole thing of like why it was that people living with one another, but whatever. That's another discussion entirely. But for the most part, we fell out. And to me, when I kind of reflected on that later on within the year, when I started to develop this idea, it was the understanding that for as much as I was on my side of it, like, oh no, he was being XYZ, I understood that it was on my side too. So taking that to extreme levels, I kind of developed this plot line, and then the book, and then the saga, and then XYZ, because I'm on the same path that you are. But I think my saga is like, I don't even know right now, like maybe 12 and counting books altogether. We'll plot it out. And it just all started from this idea of a miscommunication between people. Like, it's one of those things like, I don't know if you are hop on the Reddit sphere, or if you kind of like hop on those type of like internet discussion boards.
Yeah.
But my favorite thing is when people talk about movies and like to put like a what if this movie had X, and basically like unraveling the whole thing, like what if Game of Thrones had cell phones? It would derail most of the plot because people would just be able to instantly find out what the information was, and it would just take away from a lot of the plot lines. So the idea that I liked about what I did was that if they just sat down and had a conversation, there would be no reason for the book. It would invalidate however many thousand words I wrote.
But that's not the case.
Yes, exactly.
Right? That's not the case, right?
That's what history is.
That's your history. That's exactly. That's not the case, right? What an incredible path to be on. Good for you, because it's amazing when you find something that you're so passionate about. I think that the thing I would say is that if you're passionate about something and it's an experience like you went through this experience. So you're not writing this based on research. You're writing this on personal experience. And I'll tell you something that was said to me. If you can write about something you know and something you love, you're destined for success, because I think that's the most important thing. Find something you're so passionate about, something you love, and relate it to a real life experience. And I'm telling you, things are born out of elements like that. Passion. Absolutely. Yeah. Things are born out of passion. And people forget how to be passionate. Be passionate. Believe in yourself. One of my favorite quotes, one of my favorite Greek heroes is Alexander the Great, and his favorite quote is "Fortune favors the bold."
Yes.
Right? Fortune favors the bold. Fortune favors the bold. And I can't tell you how many times I've related to that term, because be bold. You are who you are. Be proud of that. Use that and get out there and tell your story. So good on you for doing that.
Well, just a little side note for Alexander the Great. I mean, what a leader. Yes. I love writing leaders, and that is just a shining example of what a leader is. I mean, talk about leading from the forefront. He tried to bridge two societies together and birth a new one. Now, did he do so by just being like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing now? No, he married right into it, had a kid by it, developed the idea of a brotherhood of man. The people beside you aren't just people, they're an alliance. It's something that you do together. You can, you get a couple people together and you really believes in yourselves, and you can do absolutely anything. It was like that inspiration that it's the fire that he can just birth into you again. And that is just with the delusion of history. I can only imagine how more epic it was during the time.
Absolutely. And you touch on an interest point for me, is that I am fascinated with Alexander and his bloodline. And whether you believe it or whether you don't, again, it's up to you. If you believe Cleopatra was actually his last living descendant, and she's never been found. I mean, if anyone on earth ever found the temple of Alexander or Cleopatra, it would be one of the greatest discoveries in humankind. And again, that's where ideas are born for me, is when you think about that. My goodness me, how powerful this guy was, what Alexander did, not only for his people, but for the peoples across the world. I mean, Asia, he conquered Asia, but it's not so much conquering Asia, he united Asia. I know a lot of his people might not see that. They were very, upset with him because of they married into these different races to try and unite people. And I know in the end, a lot of people thought maybe his own people poisoned him. Alexander went too far.
Yeah, but what was it? Heracea? What was
who poisoned him?
No, like the people that he was trying to, it was like the combination of the Greeks and like the Persians. It was Heracea or something like that.
Heracea. I believe it was Heracea. But Alexander believed that instead of conquering, why not unite?
Yes,
and the brotherhood of man, right? The brotherhood of man. And why not? The best way to unite is to interact your culture with other cultures, right? Something I think we still need to do a better job of today is being able to respect each other, respect the cultures that are around the world and what they represent. Alexander did that. He really did. And in my opinion, he was killed for it, because he went too far. His people wanted things to be a certain way. He saw more. He was, in all honesty, I believe Alexander was one of the greatest people that helped shape history that we know it.
His title is literally the Great.
That's right.
What?
It sums it all up. It sums it all up for you, right? And there's just incredible rich history about his family, his bloodline, what happened to him, where he was buried, where did he end up, where are his kids? Murdered. I know, but no one ever found them. Like, where's Alexander's tomb? Where's Cleopatra's tomb? No one found it, right? It's all lost in text. No one knows where it ended up. So it creates this other world of, and it's what helped me create the world I'm writing about, is that think about these events that happened and bring that back, mix reality with that, mix something into that, and tell that story, because there's so much out there that needs to be told, especially if you're talking about Alexander. I mean, you could talk for hours about him.
Now we're gonna jump into a real stream of consciousness now, but I feel like
Okay.
you're a great person to speak about this with.
Oh, thank you,
Now,
Angel. You too.
Referencing the whole thing of science fiction versus fantasy, it's something that I've been thinking about very deeply, because I actually plan on doing something kind of similar. I don't know, in book like 6 or 7. So if you look at the Bible and you look at it with open eyes, it is science fiction. Now hear me out.
Absolutely.
You have the story of the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, right? Now, what you take this event of the crossing of the desert and the whole thing of like the Red Sea, that's a 40-year event through the desert. No food, no supplies. How did they make it through? Now, one of my favorite theories that I've read since I was younger, and I'm no archaeologist, so how much factual evidence I have, yeah. But speaking just armchair expert, I think that the Ark of the Covenant, what it really was, and it was actually referenced in the Bible. It's a term called manna. Now, it's a term that, you especially, I think fans of fantasy would easily recommend. It's usually something that has to do with mages, right? It's something that has to do with magic, manna, this idea of manna, right?
Right. Yeah.
But what they described it as in the Bible was that manna was a byproduct of the Ark of the Covenant.
Interesting.
And it doesn't describe this part, but what I think you can assume from is that I think what the Ark of the Covenant was, why it was so coveted, was because it was the thing that was feeding and sustaining these people for 40 years. The Ark of the Covenant must have been some type of like nourishment. I don't even know what it must if I were to really describe it with our current understanding of technology, I would probably say it's a solar powered like reverse osmosis algae machine, basically like pumping out like protein packs off like some type of self-contained power unit. And that is why that something like that, if you want to talk about conspiracies, that's why something like that would be so hard to find, because obviously whatever government finds that, they're not just gonna let it be dropped like it was the mummified remains of King Tut or something like that, where we can easily be like, oh yeah, whatever. Then that's we're talking about a piece of technology that probably even today we wouldn't understand.
No, you talk about something. It's a great topic. It's a topic I've had. To be completely honest, I've had this conversation multiple times.
I'm the ascension of Jesus. Right. You ask anybody, hey, what is your vision of an alien? It's like, oh, well, like the tractor beam lifting up the cow. Okay, what's your vision of Jesus? Oh, it's like the light of heaven lifting up and taking them. It's like, oh, you don't think there's no similarities in between that?
That's right. I mean, let me ask you a question, Angel. I mean, if you believe in the Bible, you have to believe in the supernatural, right?
Well, even the belief of the Bible. I mean, I believe that people believe in the Bible, which it is a lot higher sentiment that I think is like conveyed in that sentence. But I always like to quote the Da Vinci Code. I think religion is a beautiful gift not bestowed upon me.
Oh, great quote. Yeah, well said. Religion is about interpretation. It's about what you need to get out of it. I
think it's allegorical.
Agreed. I think so too. I think it's something that is there. It's a record. Has the record changed? Sure. Over the years, of course it's changed. I think it's there as an aid. Do I think it's the rule book of how you have to do everything? No, but I think I'm a big spiritual person. I reflect spiritually. And I believe that's what the Bible is. It gives you the ability to reflect spiritually on things that have happened. The world is a busy place. It's a very busy place. It can pass you by. Sometimes it's good to just take a minute, take a deep breath, and be spiritual. And I think that's what the Bible is. I think everyone who you talk to is going to get something different out of it. But I think to believe in the Bible, to believe in some of the elements that have happened, is to question the very belief that what we understand today to be acceptable, because there's so much in there that you will never understand. And if you're going into the Bible trying to understand certain aspects of the Bible, you won't. You just won't. I think it's imperative that you understand that. Take the elements out of the Bible that you need, that give you some sort of relief, but don't go to the Bible and try and find exact answers, because you can't. As you mentioned, if a government found the Ark of the Covenant and the Ark of the Covenant was this all-powerful thing, would this government share that with the world? That's the ultimate question.
And even like the parting of the Red Sea, I mean, that just seems intense. The Ark of the Covenant. I mean, when you start introducing scientific pseudoscience, like fictional pseudoscience into the Bible, it just starts making a lot more sense. There was I can't remember who originally proposed the idea or where I read it, but it's something I love just geeking out about. It was the idea that the Ark of the Covenant wasn't really a boat. I mean, no, like Noah's Ark wasn't really a boat. It was an ark in the sense that it was basically a DNA centrifuge. So, the Great Dilution happens, and instead of having physically one of every animal on the ark, you have DNA samples. You have like a DNA centrifuge, an egg, basically, to restart society after the Great Delude. And even the Great Delude is such an interesting topic. I've read a couple, and to be fair, the archaeologists that say this are not the most. They're kind of made fun of in their industry, but I think it's because they're onto something. They said that supposedly way back when, Earth had a ring, and the ring was water, and then at some point, we had a pole shift or XYZ, and that ring just lost stability, and that water crashed down on the surface, which is what caused the Great Delude. Now, if you were to think of aliens as being kind of benevolent creatures, and you kind of see a higher life form, you kind of take the idea that a higher life form will take pity on a lower one. It's like, oh man, did you hear what's happening to Earth? They're about to get like wiped out basically, because like their H2O ring is about to crash down on them. They're like, oh, well, we'll send down a little egg, help them out, whatever. Pick one random guy. What's his name? Noah. All right, whatever. And and it just goes off that. And I know what I'm saying is just, I myself am quite skeptical when it comes to this, but at the same time, I also love the fantasy aspect. So I have that debating side of me, the back and forth, which I think is just, I guess, kind of fun. And in a writing aspect, because you get to go and explore all these crazy aspects, but then you kind of get to put your own voice in a character, and just have that one skeptical character in the background just saying, "Oh, that's bullshit. It doesn't make any sense."
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. That's exactly how I am. You've kind of got your two kind of, you're fighting with yourself, because I'm skeptical because I have such an out there imagination. I think that's something we kind of share, the two of us, is we're able to come up with such imaginative, creative ideas based on our skepticism. So that's something I think that's ammunition in our belt to write, because I think being skeptical about these things is good. Not accepting the norm about these things is good, because it gives you the ability to create your own. Go into a world and create your own based on what you believe. And I think being open, reading the Bible, reading mythology, reading science fiction, absorbing those stories, living your life, doing what you love to do every day. If you can find a way to bring it all together, that's where I think you can do so many wonderful things.
I mean, without a single doubt, I think that's like the essence of what like human nature is. I think it's why people like us gravitate so easily to history, because it's pretty easy to see that no matter how far we get with technology, no matter how many more billions of people we keep on adding to each continent, humans remain the same. We keep on making the same.
Right.
We keep on making the same strides. We keep on making the same backpedals. It is the beautiful irony of life. And I think it takes, I think anybody can really look back on it and just like really, I don't think we appreciate the beauty of that as much as we should. Uh, for whatever reason, I think people like to take the good with the good and the bad with the bad, when I think in reality, everything is pretty gray. And if you really accept like the, you know, if you really take the idea of yin and yang and appreciate the bad with the good, I think life can just open up in different ways. I know that helped me a lot. And I know we just went to a random like self-help tangent out of nowhere. But honestly, it really has helped me a lot, especially with like to get over like the more angsty years. Just the idea of like, yeah, everything is going to have that little bittersweet aspect to it, and there's no reason to get depressed. I mean, who hasn't had that 16-year-old realization of like, oh wait a minute, we're just one planet in like XYZ though, like we're, you know, like imagine asking a drop in the ocean its perception of the ocean. I mean, that's just insane. But like that is the same beauty. Like you are irrelevant to the universe, but you're not irrelevant to you.
Right.
Like it's why I love like the whole simulation idea. Like you start talking about the whole simulation idea that the universe is a simulation, and there's like people that will jump up and be like, oh, that means like all life is meaningless. It's like, how is that meaningless? If you were to jump into a video game and ask a random NPC what it thinks about life, it's that video game is life. Like that
life.
That's what it is. What, like your perception of it doesn't somehow change it. Like it still is that, you know?
Yes, for sure. And I think that's the very essence of why we write.
Yeah.
We write because, and you touched on something great, and again, I think it's unbelievable. I'm very much like you. I think I live in a world where everything is gray. And I think that gives us our ability to be creative because we're not swayed to one side or the other. We're open to either this side or this side. We're open to the possibilities of, although it can't be explained, maybe it existed. And I think that's where my creativity really takes over, is that there doesn't need to be an explanation for an event because it happened. It might have just happened. I think it's human nature to want to explain how everything works, whether it's how a computer works, whether it's how social media works. Everybody wants to understand how things work. But in the end, I think sometimes things just happen because they happen. And I think always looking for an explanation of why these things happen can lead to problems. I think being gray is a good thing. It allows you to be open to the many things around you that help you on your journey to become who you are.
Without a single doubt. Well said, especially in the regards to just opening your mind to the different possibilities of what things can be, and just lending yourself and lending that idea, those themes into your writing. Now, to kind of reel in your work.
Okay.
Walk me through some of these character developments that that were influenced in your writing. Walk me through the inspiration for the book. How did everything start? You said that it was inspired from your grandfather, and I'm
Absolutely.
assuming the title also plays into that grandfather's clock. Did I misspeak on that?
Grandfather Chronicles.
Grandfather Chronicles. That was like grandfather's clock. I don't know why.
You know what?
The title has a grandfather clock on it, doesn't
it? No.
It doesn't.
No, it's okay though.
What am I thinking?
I think it's one of those things, like when we were the grandfather clock, it's just something that we're so used to referring to, right? The Grandfather Chronicles is a name that I came up with just because I was so lucky as a child, Angel. I had a wonderful, wonderful grandfather. I was raised by a single mom, but her dad was absolutely amazing to me. My granddad, my grandfather. He was, without a doubt, probably one of the biggest influencers of my life, just because of the little things that he went out of his way to do for me as a child. Impressions made upon me at such a young age resonated with me for the rest of my life. And although I loved and appreciated them at the time, I didn't truly, really value them until much later in my life, when I reflected back on all the wonderful moments he spent with me, the lessons he taught me. I said to myself, it was such a wonderful experience. And I came up with this idea that my grandfather was this wonderful grandfather to myself. He was a loving father to his 3 daughters. He was such an inspirational person. He really made you believe you could do whatever you said and whatever you put your mind to. But it wasn't until later in life, when I reflected back to those lucky times, that I said to myself, what if there was more to that story? What if my grandfather had a life that, although he never really told us about, he kind of lived it in secret? And so that kind of was in the back of my mind. That was kind of always happening. I'd go to bed at night imagining, oh, what if my grandfather was this archaeologist? What if he was this explorer? What if he was this underwater diver who found this secret kingdom? So your mind starts going at night. And one of the things that I've learned through my many experiences with what was working with media production, or whether it was working through the enormous amount of schooling I did in media, one of the things I learned is that what makes a great story is not only a great protagonist, but a great antagonist. So I spent years trying to come up with, I needed a villain. I needed something that could challenge my grandfather and then ultimately challenge the protagonist, the ultimate protagonist of the story, which is me. The story, the main guy in the story, Ian, is loosely based upon the experiences I had with my grandfather as a kid. And that's evident in the book. The different scenarios, the different sequences that happen are based on truth. It's not me it's not me writing about what happened. A lot of these things in the story between the grandfather and the grandson actually happened. So they're real life events. Family who read the book when it comes out will be able to remember those events. So that's how real that part of it is. That's how real those characters are. The grandson, Ian, loosely based on myself. The grandfather in the book, based on my granddad. Even the grandson's mother is loosely based on my mom. And those characters are so important in the book. And why I took so much time building the book was I wanted to get it right. I wanted to make sure that these characters were well represented in the way that I remembered them and I lived through it. So that's that side of it. That's the reality side of the book. The fantasy side of the book and science fiction side of the book was to create a world where you seamlessly blend fantasy and reality. And after spending years trying to figure out a way to work this secret life of my grandfather into some legend, I came up with the idea to dive deeper into the Arthurian Excalibur legend. And thus, was born the Grandfather Chronicles.
Now, I have a question for you. The moment you said the Arthurian history immediately made me think of something. So my true love of my love of history was always centered around the ancients, Egypt, Greece, because that's so far away that it has more holes in it, so your imagination can even fill in even deeper. You can start getting into alien conspiracies and all these crazy things.
Oh, absolutely. Right? Yeah.
My favorite. But yeah. I just recently started getting into the Age of France, the Age of England, wait, am I saying it right? Is it called the Age of England, or is it the Story of England? What is it? Like the big Chronicles. What is it called again?
Well, the Age of England. You could call. I mean, the Age of England. You could call it. Right? That's fine. Yeah.
It's called that, right? Yeah. So the Age of England, the Age of France, and just how all these things are come together, and then specifically how tied the Age of England is with the Arthurian, saga.
That's right.
So, and the Age of Spain. So, what I have this fantasy about doing way later on, is I want to bridge all those things together, and bridge them with the ancients. Like, I want to work that, like, what was Merlin? Was Merlin truly a magical XYZ? And did he learn this magic from Egyptian people that were studying the dark arts or XYZ? And even the idea of dark arts to begin with, I always play around with the idea that, you have voodooism, which originated in Haiti. Now, you look at why would, you look at it with a critical eye. It's like, all right, now why would they do that? And you look at the time frame. It's like, all right, well, they just got conquered. and not conquered like, oh, we just came in and like we're badly conquered. We're talking about they were on an island doing XYZ. They probably had a little scuffles in between tribes or clans or other villages and whatnot, but it was self-contained. And then you have these men with fair skin and, you know, blonde hair and all these different things, people you type of people you've never seen, and they come with technology that is literally alien to you. They have armor that is made of metal. You have armadillo skins and sharpened sticks. I mean, you get rocked. And then a year later from that, you're getting auctioned off into slavery. You're seeing your lands being pillaged. You're seeing your idols made from crude gold being smelted and turned into currency for some queen that you've never even met. You're seeing your family members dying to the hand of people that are claiming that what they're doing is for the love of a god that you don't even believe in, and they're forcing you to convert before you die as some holy, as like a favor to you. And you take all this passion, and it seems pretty evident why they would turn into something like the dark arts, why they would do whatever they can in order to combat in any way. You know, you have poor people sewing together little voodoo dolls of whatever captain and just praying and putting all their passion, all their emotion into, like, please, if this guy can just get a stroke or something.
Right.
So, and then you have the birth of voodooism. And I think if you, and the thing is that as we get further away from history, from the origin spot, everything gets like mythologized.
That's right.
And to be honest, I think that all history has some, you know, every truth has a lie in it, and every lie has a truth. When you start really breaking down things, you start seeing that everything is a telephone effect. Just with time, things get diluted. And it's hard to decipher what is the dilution, if the dilution is what the truth is, or if it just got amped up.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Again, Angel, what a great segue. You touched on, I think the further you get away from ancient mythologies and medieval times, the more polluted the truth gets, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Right. I think back in ancient times, things were much more clear. Things were accepted. People were accepted for what they did. You didn't have this polluted idea that it had to be. Over the years, things kind of got lost in history. The reason why I took so much time to put into this book is I had the idea of the main characters based on real life experiences and real life characters that I knew. But as you touched on, I just want to mention this, is that one of the reasons why I took so long to write the story is I did so much research into the Arthurian legend and mythology, making sure that I got that right, making sure that the elements that represent Arthurian legend are accurate and well told in the book, making sure that it wasn't the polluted version of how Arthurian legends are interpreted today, making sure that the realism is there, making sure that all the courses I did on Arthurian legend, all these interest courses I did on mythology, making sure that I had enough resources to write a story that wasn't polluted, that was real, that was authentic, that was a true representation of what happened at that time. And that's where my love of Arthurian legend came into it, because in my head, the story kept turning, the wheels kept going, and all of a sudden I came up with this idea that everyone knows about the sword and the stone Excalibur. Everyone knows Arthur pulls the sword from the stone, he becomes the king and unifies Britain. That's the story that they told you and me. But what if there was more to that story? What if there was another Excalibur that was hidden from the world, because that Excalibur had a hidden truth, and that hidden truth is the essence to what the Grandfather Chronicles is all about.
Wow. And I really like that idea, because again, it's like the whole sci-fi aspect of, you know, with the, I guess, like the Thor
That's
idea,
right.
with like him and Mjolnir, whatever the hell. Imagine if this Excalibur, the reason why it was bestowed on Arthur,
That's right.
was a DNA test. Imagine
Right.
if it was a thumbprint. Everybody
Right.
kept on trying. It was like, oh, it doesn't work for me. Well, obviously. You try to go onto like any thumbprint act, try to take my phone right now. What are you gonna do?
Right.
Well, I mean, you know how hackers are, but for the most part, without getting into what are you gonna do? You can't get past a simple thing like that. So
That's right.
imagine if that's what it is. Oh my God, I'll take that idea and make it into a dystopian universe where technology has been, the polar caps have been demagnetized. All our electricity just went. No more electricity for us. No more magnetism. We just get reverted to the Stone Age, right? Then you go from, because humans have the shortest. We talk about animals have a short memory span. We have the shortest memory span. We will forget atrocities committed that for the same exact actions that we're gonna do again in like 40 years. It's unreal. But so you take that. You don't even have to go that far. You take 200 after that little apocalypse happened, right? And the Excalibur is an iPhone. And that iPhone has like the codes to whatever it is that you want. It has something that you need in order to be able to restart humanity. And people keep on going up. It's like, oh shit, I can't use it until Arthur comes up, puts his face to it, reads his face. Oh, it works for me. Oh shit. Oh, I guess I'm the king now.
It's right, and the world carries on, right? Just like that. The world
carries on,
and that's and you know why people love that angel? It's accepted. There's the reason. It worked, right? It was he pulled it, he unites it. That's it. So I just I always had an idea to do more. There was more to that story, and that's where the essence of the fantasy science fiction side of the Grandfather Chronicles comes in. Is it's an exploration. It's a story told in a way that has never been told. And believe you me, I went back through Arthurian legend. I went back through TV series that touched on this stuff. And the way I'm telling the story, the idea I have about the so-called real Excalibur, this story has never been told quite like this. Now, to not give too much away. I just don't want to give too much away.
Oh no. This is the point of this is promotion.
That's right.
It's not giving shit away. Now, you touch on something that is actually another great segue. What I think, and I think it's something that we can both empathize with because it's our, this is our first debut, our first baby. I think the essence of getting down to being able to really write and going through the headache of creating a manuscript when you've never done it before is this idea that you're like, hey, you know what? I know what has been out there and I have this idea for something I want to write. I think that's the home. And it actually kind of goes back to something I wanted to highlight. You were talking about that, anything that you put your passion is gonna merit some type of success. And I think that success is what needs to be defined. If you think success means that you're not going to be on Jimmy Fallon and you're going to, be rubbing shoulders with who knows, one of the Avengers, and you're going to be talking about your book right after he does a little segue about, sharing a trailer with Scarlett Johansson, you might be disappointed. If you then sit down, do a little, do a little meditating and realize that your success should be just having a work that you're proud of, that you can sit back and be like, yeah, this right here, mine. I did that. That's right. And truly being proud of it, not having a single thing of like, oh, well, I like that, but my editor had a couple of hints that I wasn't too proud of, but whatever. I just wanted to get it out there. None of that. You have to make your shit. That's what you want. Quentin Tarantino says had one of my favorite quotes, that there was somebody telling him that that he, like, how did he have the audacity to make a movie about a slave when he's a white man? Like, did he not see his privilege, XYZ and XYZ? And before the interviewer even got finished with the question, he was like, yeah, wait a minute, I can do whatever the fuck I want. You don't fund the movie, you don't do anything, you're not the producer, you're not with the network, you have no input in this. This is my work. You can watch it or not watch it. You can critique it or not critique it, but you can't tell me I can't do shit.
That's right.
And that's how and I think that's all creation. That's all anything. I mean, it goes with absolutely every aspect of human life. It's your shit. It's like, there's no often, especially with the, I almost want to say oversaturation of authors and works that Amazon has created, is that you constantly see people on Twitter or on discussion boards saying, oh, I thought of this new work. Can I do it? well, I thought of this idea of a book about a dog and a parrot's life journey. Will it work? Listen, anything will work. You got to sit down on it though. You got to
Any,
write it down.
anything will work if you're willing to put the time into it.
Yeah.
We all have a voice. Everyone has a voice, Angel. We all have the ability to be heard. It's a question of, are we going to take that chance and be heard?
Yeah.
If you had people telling you, oh, you shouldn't do that, shouldn't do this, you wouldn't have the creative genius books that we've got out there. You wouldn't have the films, the television series, these wonderful pieces of work that came from the imagination of so many great authors, producers, and directors. And they did it because they believed in themselves. Believe in yourself, believe that you have something to say, and stand by that, and you're destined to feel good about something you've created. You asked about, how do you define success? I define success as truly being proud of something you've created. If I held my book in my hand and I look at my physical book, here's the physical copy of the book. It's not a Word document. It's not a PDF. It's a physical document. And this is something that I created. I get the chills when I tell you that.
Yeah.
To me, that's success.
Yeah.
When you feel that chill, whether you end up on some nationwide, multi-million watched TV show, this is the moment that you'll remember when you look at your book and you say to yourself, that's mine. I made that. And why did I make that, Angel? Because I wanted to. Because I wanted to. Willpower. And that's success. Being truly proud of what you create. That is success, my friend.
I really believe the same thing. Truly, truly, truly. And I think that lends into something that we kind of were talking about before, that history is written by the victors. And oftentimes you'll see people that when they get ultra successful, they like to omit any wrongdoing, any of the path, any of the struggles that they did before. And it was like, oh yeah, no, what do you mean? I've been dope since I was born. You know, you see the Michael Jordan documentary, or like LeBron James documentary. It was like, oh yeah, he was making 3-pointers since I popped out. It's unreal. He was just like a god walking. He was levitating, never had to eat, never shat. I've never even smelled a fart that had LeBron James name on
it. He can do no wrong, right? He can do no wrong.
He's That's perfect. Right. My God.
Yeah.
And the thing is that people love hearing that because like they think that's what success is. It's like, oh no, yeah, there's like this perfect being. But my favorite thing is hearing stories like Bill Burr. Now, if you ask me, Bill Burr is God level comedian. It's unreal. You hear him talk about his come up, and it almost blows your mind how many times he got rejected, how many years he spent on a futon. You know, it's one of those things that almost gives you depression, because it's like, oh my God, if he spent that much time on a futon, you know, what am I doing? But then it's sit back on it though. We're now talking, he's God level. And the reason why is because he stuck to his guns.
That's right.
For that long. And then when he was finally given that recognition, people were able to trace that recognition X amount of years and realize he's been doing that and been genuinely himself for that long. And then that is what that's what made him, mythical. And his own humility is what it just adds to that. Because you go on and you hear other people talk about him, and it's not the LeBron James aspect. He goes like, "Oh, what, you're talking about me? Oh, dude, you must not know how many years he spent on a futon. You must not. You must like he lives so well within the sphere of reality that I think it's something that, and I reference Bill Burr almost all the time. But I think he is such a golden standard of what to view success as. It's something that it's internal. It's not external.
So true. So true. Just to touch on another point that I just I had to mention, because you mentioned it, and it's so well said. Failure is part of success. Anyone who doesn't agree with that hasn't had success then. Failure is part of success.
Jesus.
How do you define success? In my mind, you define success by your ability to work through your failures.
Yeah.
Learning from your mistakes, that's true success. Because the world may show you in this perfect light, but there's more to that. And the journey behind the scenes of who you are and how you got there is important. It's something I'm always going to remember. You talk about LeBron James and Michael Jordan, both tremendous athletes, both have done unbelievable things for the world of basketball. The amount of youth that look up to these individuals for who they are, gods, as you mentioned, in a world of sport. But their true story of success, I bet you, is measured by something very different than what we see.
Yep.
It's well said.
And I mean, it lends to so many different aspects of just what everything is. I mean, the reason I love writing so much is, you know, you go into engineering or you go into any craft and it becomes pretty clear that for the most part, there's something limited that is not defined. Well, like you're limited by things that aren't defined by the industry, by the craft itself. So you go into engineering or designing or architecture, whatever it is, and you have a love for it. You have a passion for creation. You have a love for being an accountant, whatever it is. You'll find pretty soon that you're going to be limited by company culture. You're going to be limited by your superior that maybe fears like a young whippersnapper coming through and trying to shake up the game. So they limit how much information they give you. You know, it goes on and on and on. And it's depressing how quickly you get into something like that, and you can just get into, I guess, like the real world, if you want to call it like that. But in reality, I consider that the Matrix. But you just see those limitations immediately, and people love to say it's a thing about gender or race. I mean, like that's a conversation for another day. But I think it's something that it's past the meritocracy. It's past your ability. It's something that you're just limited to by the structure of the conglomerate that you're in, of the system that you're in. Writing has no such limitation. I will sit down on Monday and write you a paragraph. I will sit down and write you that same paragraph in 2 months, and I'm telling you it will be better. It is limitless. There's nothing that I love more than this. I can tell you just by going through fucking edits. Sorry to curse there. There was no reason to curse there on that one. But
and editing is part of storytelling, but it becomes frustrating. I feel your pain, Angel. Like I said, I worked in the media industry, and editing is a tireless, and it's exhausting. But you need to do it. You need to do it. So I understand. I know it can become frustrating looking at the same thing over and over and over again, but trust me, in the end, it'll be worth it.
No, and the point that I was saying, like the reason I regretted throwing that in there was because I don't view it as a negative anymore. There's nothing that I love more. Well, again, it is stressful, but you go through chapter 1, you edit all the way through, and by the time that you get to, chapter 7, you already sharpened up your skill. You can already rewrite a paragraph that you wrote 3 days ago better. Like it's unreal just how quickly you start developing things, and you start learning rules, and it's like, okay, and now those things are developed. Now those things that you were questioning, that you kind of question, it's like, oh, is that how I write? If I want to write a sequence like this, is that how I do it? And you kind of just do it blindly, just kind of hoping for the best, and then you start just sharpening up those skills, and it just leads in. I can tell you, just recently, this week, I learned how to use an M dash, and I'm pretty confident in my ability to do an M dash now. Pretty confident. And I just learned about its existence a week and a half ago. Like, it is unreal. There is nothing that I love more than this craft. Like, it is just limitless. It is limitless what you can put if you're willing to put the hours in it.
That's right. Absolutely right. One of the things I've always said to myself, I've learned it the hard way. I've been critiqued, especially in the media industry, especially as you're experiencing right now with your edits. My edits have been pulled apart. My book has been pulled apart. My story has been pulled apart. But at the time, I'm kind of like, oh my goodness me, the story just keeps on being pulled apart. The story never changed. The craft got better.
Yep.
The craft got better. And I can't tell you the people who spent the hours with me trying to make it, the story better. The story never changed. It's the craft just got better. It went from an amateur manuscript to a professional looking manuscript. And that's because if you put the hours in, if you put the time in, if you're willing to learn and willing to listen, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And I didn't always believe that. It took me a long time to understand that. I had the, I was very lucky. I just finished doing an advanced writing class to add to do. So I'm always trying to learn more. I'm already writing book 2 of this trilogy, and going through this writing class, the first 5 chapters have completely changed. Not the story, Angel, the craft. Just the ability to be able to tell my story in a concise and professional way. So there's something that's you can say, you can definitely, there's something that's been, you can be said for taking the time to edit and taking the time to make sure that your craft is the very best it can be.
I mean, that's the whole thing. And what's even, I think, cooler about it is that when you start understanding what certain, like the actual definitions of what certain things are, and you start bringing those into your writing as you grow, it's such a fun experience. Like I remember I had a professional, like I was doing like a little powwow after a recording with a very established author who I had been writing for a long time, and he was giving me a couple pointers. And not that he read my manuscript and was giving me pointers on that, but just giving me pointers, general pointers. And he was saying that, you know, most of writing, like no matter how much you build a plot, it's all about conflict resolution, even if it's simple things. Like he was telling me that, like, if you watch any movie, why is it that even regardless of the plot, they'll always have that one scene where, like, you know, that they have 4 seconds left and they have to input a code or something like that. It's because, like, you have to have some type of like pull every so often. You need to have some type of conflict resolution, and there has to be something to pull you in. And it's not just an emotional development to the characters, an emotional attachment to the characters. It's not just a phenomenal plot. It's something, you know, it's a swing set, up and down. You got to keep going.
Yeah, it's well, we're both part of a world that is continuously changing. Craft is something that I think is unique to everybody. Your craft is very different than my craft. And being able to balance the craft with the ability to tell a great story is in essence what writing is all about. That's something that I've just recently learned. We can all sit down and write about experiences. We can all sit down and write what is important to us. But to take that and turn it into a manuscript, or turn into a story or a short story or a paper on something, is unique to each person. And I think whatever we can do, the more we read, the more we interact, the more we talk to fellow authors, the more we can do to hone our skills will allow us to tell our story in the best way possible. And I think that should be the ultimate goal of any author.
Well said, and without a single doubt. Now, to go back to the Grandfather Chronicles.
Okay.
You just held up a proof right now, so you're already at the point where you have a physical copy of it.
Absolutely, yes.
Walk me through the process that you're at right now and how you're developing book 2. And again, spoiler free. It's all about the anticipation.
Absolutely. So with respect to book 1, so yes, absolutely. As I held up there, as success is defined for me is holding that book in my hand and looking at it and saying, wow, we've come a long way. Here's something that I'm truly proud of. The step that I'm at right now is that we are in the process of actually having the book reviewed by our professional review company. It's actually out right now being reviewed by Kirkus Reviews. And at the moment, as we speak right now, as each day goes by, as I anxiously await to hear back their remarks on the book, the next step is waiting back for that review and hoping that we can use part of that review and actually put it on the final book cover itself. So when the book comes out, that review is part of it. I also have a number of reviews out to other authors and bloggers right now. And if timing were to line up, because it's right now we're waiting on the Kirkus review. Once the Kirkus review comes back, then we will have a definite date when the book will be published. We're that close. We're at the physical proof. We get the Kirkus review back. If I have a couple of other reviews that I want to use, I may use those as well on the book. We submit that, or I submit that back to the publisher. They come up with the final design, they proof it, and bam, we go to print. So we're close, but we're not quite there. And we're just waiting on those aspects because I'd like to include that with the book. In my experiences working in the media industry, I really do value the expertise of professionals, and that's why I decided to go ahead with this Kirkus review. I know everyone said to me it's not guaranteed to be a good review. We don't know what'll come back, but in my opinion, from the different projects I've worked on throughout my media and producing career, it was worth the risk. So that's really what we're waiting for now, Angel, with respect to book one, is getting that review back and deciding if we're going to use it and then going ahead to print. So a lot of my time right now is being spent on promotional things. I'm very lucky to be on here with you today talking about the book. I'm spending a lot of my time on Twitter and social media, meeting people, wonderful supportive people like yourself who have given me the opportunity to talk and express my story to the world of how I got here. So that's where a lot of my time is being spent right now. I'm also spending some time working on book 2 of the trilogy. The Grandfather Chronicles is a trilogy. I always imagined it as a trilogy. It's 3 books. Book 1 is kind of an independent story within itself, but the characters continue into book 2, and book 2 and 3 are connected. And I have begun writing book 2, and I know where I want to go with that. One of the reasons why I did kind of hold up is because I did take an advanced writing course to kind of help fine-tune my skills a little bit. And I held up on writing, on continuing writing book 2, because I wanted to really learn from this class and apply to the chapters that I'd written what I'd learned in that writing class. So that's where I'm at from a book standpoint, from book 1 and 2. Almost there with book 1 and on my way with book 2. But I feel better about book 2 now because I really got some professional help on the first few chapters. And I believe, as we mentioned, the craft has gotten better.
Now, walk me through the technical aspects of book 1. So you finished the manuscripts. Do you have to deal with typesetting? Do you have to deal with interior design, formatting, or is that something that you passed off to your publisher?
Great question. So with Friesen Press is who I've published my book with. Friesen Press is self-publishing, which means you have a lot of control over your creative elements, layout design, cover design, how the interior text looks. So to answer your question, I did go through all of those steps. You go through what's called a developmental edit, which in essence is tearing apart your edit and making sure it's the very best. I was so lucky to have a wonderful editor that Friesen assigned to me that spent countless hours going through the Word document, coming up with little notes on the side of all the suggestions that she thought would be worth changing in the actual document. And I trusted her. I had a great rapport from her from day one, and we went ahead and did that. So that was the developmental edit. You go through what I call a series of edits, the developmental being the biggest one, all done in Word documents. This is all done through Word, right? So you're going through Word.
Yeah, track changes.
Track changes, you know that. Tracking changes through your Word documents. So we did all that. From your developmental edit, again, you have total control here. The editor makes suggestions. You don't have to take those suggestions, but I did. I was like a sponge. I absorbed it all. I wanted all the help I could get, especially with book 1, because I believe that's how I'll be defined, is how well book 1 resonates with the people reading it. So I really took all the help I could get to make sure it was great. And I was so lucky to have a great editor who helped me through the developmental edit, who helped me through the copy edit, which is an edit where you pretty much just look at punctuation, but you can still make more changes. Once you're through your edits, you go to what's called layout. Layout is where you get back a cover design. You'll get back a document with how your book will look, broken up into, like, for example, when you open a book, you see it on a page. That's very different than a Word document. You'll get an actual document that shows you what each page will look like. It was very interesting to see that. That was a great step, because when you're working months on a Word document, when you see it as an actual book, that's kind of like, wow, this is real now. We're getting there. And what I also loved about Friesen Press is they gave me pretty much total control over the design of my cover. So I pretty much went to them. I want this. I want this. I had the idea for my villain. All I wanted on the cover was her eyes. And if you see that on the cover of the book, you see her eyes on the cover. And I wanted that because, just to quickly show you, wherever the book is in the room, the eyes kind of follow you. And that was what I wanted. I knew I wanted that from the very beginning. I went to them with that, and they created that for me. So you give them all these elements, your ideas. They come back to you with rough sketches, rough documents. You mark it up. You decide if you want this, do you want to keep this? You send it back, and they implement those changes. Very much in your control. Once you go ahead and you approve those documents, then you go with something that I call the A.R.T, which is an advanced reader copy. That's a PDF of the book itself, what it will look like in electronic format. This is where you see now everything coming together. If you submitted illustrations for the book, they're part of that PDF now. And you see the book as almost like what it will look like as an electronic copy of the book when it's released. From the A.R.T, you go to the physical proof copy. As I showed you, the book in physical form. You can actually flip through it. It's real. It's in front of you. You go to the physical proof. You proof that. Keep in mind, Angel, all these steps, they give you time to review the things. It's not like, Angel, here's the physical proof. Let me know what you think by tomorrow. They give you time between each step to make sure that you're sure you want to proceed and you move along. I like to say you keep climbing the ladder to the top. So you keep moving to the top. You get to the physical proof. You approve the physical proof. It goes to the print queue. Bam, we got a publication date. And that's pretty much the process explained and the steps I went through. And it's taken me just over a year now to go through that process. It took me almost 2 years to get my edit to a point before I submitted to Friesen. So it's been a long journey. But as I mentioned at the beginning, it's a journey worth it, because I really want to make sure this book will define me. And I want to make sure that it is done to the very best that it can be.
Now, it's actually like funny that you ran through down all those steps, because since I'm doing indie publishing, I hold all those cards on my hands.
Excellent.
I personally made my covers. Well, I got them professionally made and then tweaked it on my own. I learned graphic designing, made the own company logo. I did get an editor, but for the most part, I do a lot of the editing on my end as well. And then you have the point that I'm at now is I'm at typesetting and formatting, and that's something that I now have to do. I now have to make the text breaks, the little lines in between the scene shifts. I now have to create those, and it's not a have to. It's actually I kind of get to. Instead of making a quick little 3-line, I can now make a kind of like cool little sci-fi thing.
Absolutely.
And now that I'm at that level, and we both have a kind of a special thing for imagination. And now that I'm allowing myself to focus more on the formatting, I can now see like, oh, well, this is a science fantasy book. So the same way that fantasy books usually have like the typography, like that cool letter at the beginning of the chapter that's like all made in like rustic, big, like that T that has like all those like designs in it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do.
I can now make a sci-fi version of that. So instead of it being like this weird, fantastical, almost church mosaic type of thing, I can make it like a circuitry.
That's right.
I can do whatever I want.
You can do whatever you want. Yeah.
And it's one of those things that's it's a double-edged blade, because you have all that pressure on your side that there is nothing that you can pass off to anybody else, but you also have all that control on your side, which I think is just the beauty of the growth of the industry. It's before, it was not, the only way to get your voice out there before was getting it reviewed by an X amount of panels of other adults. And I always joked around, especially when I first got the idea of being an author. It was because when you first, I can't say it for everybody, but my first idea of success when it came to writing was like, oh well, getting an agent, traditional publishing, XYZ. And I think a lot of people are still on that thing. I mean, you see, especially on Twitter, you see it all the time of like, oh, looking for representation. It's like, for what? You want to give somebody 20% of your commission?
Right.
Like, what are you doing? You know how the internet works. You think they're gonna do anything that you can't do? They just have more balls.
That's right.
Or more ovaries. I'm not gonna get into that whole thing. But you understand what I'm saying? It's like,
yes,
they just go out. What, you don't think you can hit up a network and ask for some time? It always blows my mind when people are surprised that I ask them. It's like, you could ask me. Like, what, you think I'm gonna say no? It doesn't matter. You just go out and ask people. They're like, the worst that's gonna happen is they say no. And it's not even like it wasn't the 70s. It's not like you have to face rejection to the face. It is electronic now. You can't.
That's right.
Well, you're gonna get hurt your feelings because you saw a 3-character text that said no period. That's gonna ruin your day. Ruin your hour. Okay, I'll take that. It's gonna ruin your day though. Come on, you need a little more maturity for that. Like,
right.
it is nothing to just go out there and go for it. And specifically with everything that we have to do, specifically with all the marketing that is on our end, it's a sort of the Hercules. It's just like the ever impending doom, but it's also what adds a little fire to you.
You're absolutely right. And I do believe, I think, especially when it comes to promoting or marketing the book, in your case as well, Angel, I think it's important to remember that not everyone's going to want to help. You have to accept that. You cannot think that everyone wants to help you. The world looks after itself. There's a lot of people out there who don't want to give you a chance. It's one of the reasons why I chose to go with Friesen Press. They're an independent publisher that has the means to get your book published, but gives you control to create it. And it's one of the things that I valued very much in making that decision, because I have spent years in various jobs and other professions submitting letters to big businesses, asking for this, asking for that. And if you cannot accept the fact that you're going to get more rejection than approval, you shouldn't do it. You are not, out of 100 letters that I send out, you might get one, maybe. Yeah, does it happen? The stars align and you get that perfect reply? Sure, it does, Angel, but not often. You have really got to put yourself out there and really push just to get yourself heard. But that being said, you need to have a professional product so that when someone does give you the chance to be heard, you have that product to give them, because you may only get one chance. So you've got to make sure you take the best of that one chance. But I agree with you. A bad rejection letter is not going to wreck my day. Sure, I feel bad for an hour, maybe two. Right. But success, like I mentioned, isn't measured in how many success letters you get. Success is measured in how many no letters you get, and how many, and you keep going, how many rejection letters you get, and how you get up from that rejection and continue on. That is how you define success. Mm-hmm. The unwillingness to give up on what you believe in. And in a world that's ultra competitive, you need to stay true to that.
I mean, without a single doubt. So going back to the grandfather clock, I keep on referencing that. Going back to the Grandfather Chronicles, apologies. That's 40 lashes for sure.
I'm gonna have to put a grandfather clock in one of the books now, just to reference this, right? Just because it seems to be that the grandfather clock, right? I like actually the name of that.
No, you know what the worst part is? That I have a really bad like associative memory.
That's like, okay.
Everything, I just associate everything with a quick little thing. I have no names on my phone in my contacts. You go through, it's a whole bunch of nicknames.
It's all nicknames, right?
It's all it is. I have a friend named Colliday, and he spells his name Kolade, which is one letter away from Kool-Aid. So that is his name.
That's his name.
Kool-Aid. I mean, why argue? Like, that's just perfect. And then it just like everything is like it's just associative, quick little things. So like Grandfather Clock kind of just keeps on popping into my head. Grandfather Chronicles. Going back to going back to your trilogy, taking with the note of everything that we've been building on, everything that we've been kind of talking about throughout the about the podcast, is that the process is really everything. It's the growth of the craft as you grow within the industry. So with everything you've been learning, your advanced writing courses, your studying of the Twitter sphere, your understanding of social media, what elements are you taking from your steps and missteps of book one and taking into book two? What have you learned? What are you going to grow from?
Oh, what an awesome question. Book one, although I wrote what I truly believe a great story for book one, what I lacked was the ability to polish it to a point that makes it professional. I am by definition, I want it perfect. I'm a perfectionist. Perfection is what I am after. I knew when I was finished writing the manuscript for book one, it was not, although I love the story, because I've read, because I'm involved, and I like to learn about different projects that people are working on. I know it was in no means ready to go to print. I know it wasn't. And that's where I did some research into editing and Friesen Press. And I said, okay, they're a reputable company that will help me take my story that I love and turn it into something professional that's accepted in the industry. As I worked through the different steps with them, Angel, I started to understand a little bit more about how craft is defined. Having less words that are more descriptive is better than rambling on with 5 or 6 sentences. It's something I'm still learning, but I was able to first see that through the detailed edits of book one with Friesen Press. Once we got to a final sign-off of book one, I looked at what I started with and what I ended with. And as I mentioned earlier on, although the story is the same, I can't believe how the grammar and the punctuation and the copy edit, how the polish it looked so professional. But I'm a guy that likes to learn stuff and carry on with that. So I said to myself, okay, book one is finished, but now you've got to write book two and book three. How do you take what you've learned from book one and carry that forward? And that's where I decided to start taking some advanced writing classes, because the advanced writing classes allow me to submit my work and have professional editors who run this class, established authors, critique and review it from a professional standpoint. And that's where I learn. Because if I understand why someone's making a change, I'll remember it. I'll remember it up here. And that's something that I took from book one and have carried into book two. And I can't tell you how book two has changed from a punctuation polished standpoint than when I first started. And that's because of the lessons I learned by going through the editing process with Friesen, as well as doing the extra courses in writing that allowed me to have my work critiqued a section at a time. Because if I understand it, I'll remember it. And that's the most important thing for me.
You touch on a lot of things that I really agree with. I mean, just like the whole thing of learning one, brevity, right? Which is the idea that it's an iceberg. It's the iceberg analogy, a Hemingway's iceberg analogy. You don't give away the mass of what you want. You give a little tip and just the context of what you write, if you do it correctly, alludes to the larger thing underneath the surface, right?
Right.
And not only that, but growing from your edits. I mean, I am just really going through my edits and understanding not just that they're made, but why they were made. I'm pretty confident that by the 4th or 5th book, I won't need an editor. I'll just need a proofreader. Like, because obviously there's certain things that you just won't catch because you wrote it.
That's right.
You edit 1,000 times, but even in your edits aren't reflective of what you have in your head. It's crazy that it happens where you'll read something over and over again, and how you have it in your head is how it's meant to be, but for whatever reason your brain just like omits your own mistakes, you know what I mean?
For sure.
And you pass it off to somebody else that, like, you know, failed English all throughout high school, and they put, it's like, oh yeah, dude, it's right there, how did you not see that? It's like, yeah, how did I not see that?
That's right.
Because you were literally just like blind to it because you wrote it.
That's right.
So but just that, I think that's like an awesome idea. 4 or 5 books, I won't need an editor. I don't have a major in English, but it's just the understanding of the craft that you get to a certain point that it's like, ah, you know what? Yeah, I get this. I understand what's going on now. And again, I cannot laminate the idea of brevity more. I boiled down my manuscript from like 100,000 something to 68,000, and I cannot tell you how happy I was with how happy I am with the result, just because there is no fat, like no fat. It is trim.
Right.
It is there. Well, I mean, a little fat, because I do like it. Is called the Allegory of the End. I mean, it's
very cool name.
Its reference is the Allegory of the Cave by Socrates. It's about, you know, it's supposed to be a philosophical work, an allegorical work. Obviously, it's laden with entertainment value, you know, sci-fi and all these things, and crazy aliens and blah blah blah. But at its heart, that is what it's supposed to be. It is me sitting down and basically trying to have a conversation with the reader. You know, having a stream of consciousness. What is life? What is XYZ? What are your aspirations? What is you know, fate versus manifest destiny? We talked about the Allegory of the End, and it's something that you were talking about with your trilogies, but how I decided to do it is that, so you talked about that the Grandfather Chronicles, the first book, is kind of self-contained. The characters go on in order to make the sequels that follow it.
That's right.
What I did is that Allegory of the End Volume 1 and Allegory of the End Volume 2 are actually book 1 and book 3
neat.
Of the saga. And then the book I'm writing right now, Iris of Mercy, is actually book 2 and book 4. So Allegory of the End, Volume 1 and 2, is a self-contained story of Zako and Jid.
Okay.
And Iris of Mercy is a self-contained story of of Haz and Alice, who are side characters in Allegory of the End. So those four stories in total together fit like Lego pieces to create the lore that builds up to book 5.
Excellent.
And you know, like I said, there's nothing that you love more than the whole idea of building onto it, because for as much as I love, you know, for as much as Allegory of the End is my current baby, I can just get chills thinking that by the time I get to by the time I get to Iris of Mercy book 3 or whatever, I'll look back at Allegory of the End like it was cute. It's like, oh yeah, I remember when I wrote that bad, you know. Oh, I remember that one.
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, that was cute. I remember being that poorly at my craft, and then like it's like the beauty of it, because you know, you bring up a movie like Swingers to Jon Favreau, who's on The Mandalorian. He'll probably laugh. It's like, oh yeah, oh my god, I made that movie dragged on. They like, he can probably tell you, like, he probably doesn't even remember the good parts.
Nope, right.
Remembers all the things that he did poorly in that movie, but we viewed that like it was a masterpiece. And then just like you know, like as a fan, you can just like do that thing. And whether you have incredibly commercial success or not is irrelevant. I think most people will at least find that one fan that really vibes with them and really gets and really understands what they were trying to do. And when you find that person, and just having that conversation with that person, it's like, oh man, your first book, and you're sitting there, it's like, oh dude, what? That shit was horrible.
Do you know what? Do you know what? I'll share a personal experience with you, Angel. It just happened to me 2 days ago on Twitter, and just to follow up with Twitter. And sorry, to go back to a point you made before I get into the Twitter personal experience I had, which really kind of made this real for me, more real than even having the book itself in my hand. I was always taught by a teacher, and he said to me, as a producer, sometimes you can get too close to your work. It's important to have people who are able to take a step back from your work and have people look at it with fresh eyes. As you mentioned, I think it's important to be able to have proofreaders look at it. You get so lost in your world of writing that you forget that somebody else reading that might not read it the same way you do. So that's why I think it's very important to know how to write, but know how to read as well. And that's where I've really upped my reading. I'm reading much more now, because the more you read, I know I was told this as a kid and I never really took to it. The more you read, the better you get at understanding reading, because understanding reading and being able to write are two very, very important things. But it's important to be able to take a step back from your work and look at it and have fresh eyes look at it. So I just want to touch on that point, because I think it's very important. I'll tell you something this week that on Twitter that really did it for me. I've had an unbelievable experience on Twitter. I was brand new to it. I'm 2.5 weeks into Twitter, 2.5 weeks. So I'm a newbie still. And the support I've seen on there, the people I've interacted with, have just been amazing. But I'll tell you one that really kind of hit home with me 2 nights ago. I've posted my coming soon trailer on Twitter as a pinned tweet. So you can see the trailer there that Friesen designed for me. I had a gentleman comment on that post. What he said to me is, my daughter watched your trailer and she's already added it to her reading list. That hit home with me. That hit home with me because there's someone who watched that trailer and wants to read my work. That's real, Angel. And that did it for me. That's like, I know, people might look at that and say, oh, it's one person. Fine. But it's one person more who really wants to read what I wrote. And that was a wonderful experience to read that.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what did it for me. Now, I don't know if this is due to, like, I don't know, daddy issues or some bullshit I never got over, or some bullshit that I never got over when I was a kid. But I live for getting trashed. Like, it is just a side note of what I'm about to get into. What I remember vividly, the one time that anybody really ever roasted me, because I think it is one of the funniest things ever. There was a girl, I used to be like really overweight in college, and there was a girl that came into the dorm when I had my shirt off, and she said that my nipple looked like the back of a rotten lemon.
Oh my
of a rotten lime. And the worst part about it is that, we're in college, so you always had a rotten lime in the fridge to verify. And we did a little comparison, and she was right on the money. And listen, I've never laughed so hard in my life ever. Like, it was the funniest thing ever. Like, I think back on it so much. Like, I want to shake her hand. And like, anytime I think I was like, oh, dude, nah, you did it. You really did a really good job. I've never, no one's gotten me like that since or before. And again, it is just one of those things that it's hilarious. I don't know why I live for getting trashed, and compliments just never stay up with me. So
stay up with me.
They really never do, and obviously I appreciate it. I'm not going to be that person. I'm very happy to hear it, but they just don't stay with me.
Okay, I get it. I understand.
So so there was one time I'm talking to a very established author, and I had this thing. I was like, oh, listen, I'm going to send you some of my my prologue, and I want you to rip through it. And this was an author that's what he did. He was kind of known for it. And he was like, are you sure you want that? We're going to do it on air. And I was like, no, I'm telling you, let it rip. Like that's like meme material. Like, if you can get me to cry on my own podcast, I mean, I'll go viral tomorrow. It'll be awesome.
Right.
So, I'm not joking. I did not mince words. I really wanted him to tear through it. And even before we started recording, I told him the same thing. I was like, listen, do not go easy. You go through it. And he was like, all right, I'll even have it open so I can bullet point it. And when it got to that point, all he did was compliment him. I was literally waiting for it. I was like, come on, give me something.
He built this anticipation.
I was like, come on, give me something. And he was like, he was like literally waiting for it. I was like, oh, I'll tell you what. He's like going through the lines. He was like, oh, that's actually pretty good. Okay. Going to the next line, he was like, oh, well, here. Nah, that's actually pretty good. Like, if anything, it was just punctuation shit. It was like, oh, you see here. Because obviously I don't have a major in English. So, like,
that's right.
And again, just for people like listening on that might not know this yet, when you write dialogue, and let's say pass the lighter, she said while picking up a cigarette. The end of that quotation, of the end of that quote, ends with a comma, because it's not at the end of the sentence.
That's right. Yeah.
And if you were to flip that and said as she picked up a cigarette, she said, "Pass me the lighter," then it would end up with a period because it's at the end of the sentence.
That's right.
Things like that, you just don't know, but are obviously very crucial to the writing aspect. And to you coming up, it might seem so like it's like, oh, it doesn't even change the flow of the, a period versus a comma doesn't even change the flow of how you're saying it, but it does have a huge just avalanching effect on your writing. Because if you don't master those type of things in the beginning, then you kind of lose people out in the end. And again, it's just one of those things of the growth of the craft and just how those different things go. My favorite thing anybody ever said was they didn't say that my work was good or that it was bad or that it lacked character, X, Y, Z. They just said that I had a unique writing voice. That if my manuscript was in a blind contest with with other authors, that editor could easily pick out and know that it was me that wrote that one. And I valued that higher than anybody, sending me those Twitter paragraphs of like, oh my God, it was sensational. Move over, Stephen King. Who cares?
Okay,
That
right.
that in itself was all I needed. It was like, no, this is actually pretty, like you got your own voice here. Because as far as technical ability, that's gonna grow. But if you have your own unique spin on things, then that's home. That's passion, right.
And it's the essence of why I created the Grandfather Chronicles.
Yes.
It's my unique vision on a mythology that I love with people that I love. And it's taking that world that I love, the real world that I experience with such wonderful family and wonderful people who have all been a part of my journey so far, and taking them into this far off world that has been told one way, but I'm telling it a very different way. It's my unique way. It's my unique voice of telling it. So good for you. That's a great compliment. If someone ever said to me, I love your work, it's so unique, I would take that as the ultimate compliment, because that's what I'm aiming for. That's what I'm shooting for. I am shooting for, you have a unique voice. I want that. I want that. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure you just haven't gotten the review yet.
I know, but and that's part of this process, right? The part of this process is taking that chance, sending it out there for reviews, taking that chance, sending it off to professional reviews, taking that chance to other people are going to read this. That is the inevitability of what this is. It's going to be out there. Yes, it's sitting here on my desk right now, but it's going to be out in the world. It's important to understand what the world thinks of it early on. It's important to get some sort of feedback into how is this book resonating with people out there. And my goal, as we've mentioned, as you mentioned, actually, Angel, is to tell this story and have people appreciate the unique way in which I told it.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Now we're kind of approaching the end of the podcast. It's phenomenal recording so far. I've had a blast.
Oh, Angel, this has been wonderful. It's just been incredible to sit down and talk with you. I haven't done this before, so it's so nice to be able to reflect back on the journey with you and to have someone to listen like yourself. So it's been incredible. But yes, please go ahead.
Oh no, you've done great. I'm honestly surprised that this is the first time you've had a recording.
First time.
Yeah, you're doing great. That's awesome. Now, usually how I like to ask people is, I think movies and TV have a great, not only inspiration, but I think they're kind of like the modern form of storytelling is. Not that it takes away anything from literature, but I think it's just a new medium, and I think there's a lot of beautiful art within it.
Agreed.
Now, what are your inspirations as far as movies go, as far as TV shows go? I mean, especially when it comes to fantasy and science fiction, as you said, are your genres of preference. How do these translate into the things that you use as entertainment? Because I think it's one of the favorite things about writing.
Sure.
Why this craft is so awesome is that every little thing that you experience, even if it's you spending hours eating a PBJ or cereals in your boxes or watching, Marvel, you can even use that as inspiration. Even that is somehow work, if you can twist it as that. So
yeah,
what would you call the things that you unlimitlessly refer to? What are the things that you look back on as like, oh no, yeah, this, if I can somehow even get to a fraction of what this story did for me, If I can give a fraction of that to somebody else, I could die happy.
Yeah, it's a great question, wonderful question, and I'll try and touch on it the very best I can. So as I mentioned earlier on, I have background in the media industry. Media essentially is you write something and you put it on screen. That's the media production I did. You write a proposal for a documentary, you write a proposal for a short film or a feature film, and the idea is you write this and then you shoot it live action and it puts it on screen. So I think the idea of seeing media on screen is great because you can see it happening. When you're reading a book, you're creating that vision in your head. You can't see it. You might read my book and see something different than I envision. When something has been created and put on the screen, that's someone's vision already. And I think I'm very fortunate because I've come from media production where I've written and we've created this on-screen presence, if you will. And now I'm writing a book and I have to create this imagination so that people can picture that. And I think that is an asset because no matter what form of media you do, whether you produce a television show, whether you produce a movie, whether you produce a documentary, it all starts as a script. It all starts as writing being translated to the screen. But with my book and with authors who are writing books today, they don't necessarily get their books on screen. Their vision is what you and I imagine it. It's what our audience imagines when they read our book. That's what they see. And I think that's so important because the ability to be able to create a world in someone's head is what every science fiction and fantasy author is in the game for. And when I look at movies that inspire me, shows that inspire me, no question, Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings to this day is still my favorite bunch of books. I read them once a year. I know them inside and out. It's a heavy read, but it's a read that I enjoy. And then seeing them being made into movies, being able to see the visuals on a screen takes it full circle. So that inspires me because I see this world of story created from the books that I've read for my entire life, put on screen and done in a way that I can relate to, a way that represents how Lord of the Rings should be told, really makes that stand out and really makes that special to me because I can relate to that. I can relate to, okay, I have to write this chapter and this is what I see in my head. What do I have to do to make sure that my readers see that as well? I don't have the benefit of going to a production company and saying, here's my book, turn it into a movie. I have to make that movie appear in my audience's head when they read that book. And that's the art that I look for. So when it comes to inspirations behind shows, I love Lord of the Rings because I can relate to that as both a book and a show. I loved science fiction shows like Fringe. I loved science fiction shows like The X-Files. I loved shows. I'm just going down my list of different shows I watched. I did watch, of course, because I wanted to get a little bit of background in Merlin and Excalibur, I did watch the show Merlin. All these things have a place up here, and they all kind of play with my imagination. And I use them all to develop this wonderful grandfather chronicle universe that was born out of the creativity and imagination and eclectic nature that I have when it comes to just absorbing craft through different mediums of work, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. I love movies so much that descriptive wise anyway, seeing scenery wise, my book has cinematography in it. Like the chapters, how one chapter goes to another is they mirror one another. The same, like, the same way that like a scene will shift and like, the moon will turn into an apple and that's like the next scene. I try to do the same thing within writing. I mean, like, that's how much it's like this is like an ode to almost a literary movie. That's how much I love the idea of movies. And to lend into your to the whole production thing, I have kind of a funny story. major tangent, but it has to do with history. I think you kind of enjoy it.
Okay.
When I was in sophomore year in high school, we had a project for American history, and we had three options. We can either make I think it was just two options. We can either write like a formal paper, or we can make like a video. Literally no one else chose the video. I was the one person that decided to make a video. So what I decided to do was I made a tongue-in-cheek commercial for a plantation owner, right?
Okay.
And just it's actually funny. It's one of those things that I wonder if it got out, if I would get like bashed for PC. But like again, it's like I was making fun of the idea, and just to like go further, I'm pretty light skinned right now, just because I'm an author and I'm spending all my day writing, right? But like
That's right.
back when I filmed this, I was several shades darker, and I played the part of the plantation owner, and my best friend, who was literally the same skin color as me, was a slave. So, and what I did is I took flour.
Oh no, you didn't.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And I put it on my hands. I put it on my thing. I even put like a white blouse on, like his mother's blouse, because we didn't have any like formal shirts. We were like kids. So I put like a white blouse on, and I played, and I put like like some dog fur on my nose, right? Just like put like a horrible like southern accent on, and I was like talking about, it's like, oh yeah, we took all these people from the families and homes, and then we're giving them to you for a discount offer, like that type of like energy. And the entire thing, it was just like, I guess in essence, it's one of those things that you look back on, and it's like one of those things that you almost slap yourself in the head. It's like, how did you not know this is what you want to do for the rest of your life? Because even then, what I was trying to do was, I guess, trying to find the grayness of a situation that's so dark, trying to like,
right.
trying to basically trying to bring discourse by bringing humor to something that normally would not have humor surrounding it, which I think is why comedy is such a beautiful thing, because it opens up discourse. I don't know how much of a fan of comedy you are, but one of my favorite stand-up is by Dave Chappelle.
Yep.
Yes. I can't remember which. Killing Him Softly.
Oh yes, that's right. I know the gig you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that he riffs on it, that he jokes about, was the idea of like, what is 15 really, right? That he was making comparisons, that I think Amy Smart was abducted in XYZ, and she was caught, and they found out that she was kept captive only a couple blocks away from her house, and her captors would frequently leave the house unlocked while they would go out and do their business, and without restraining her to any degree. And he was making that comparison to a little black girl in Chicago that was taken by meth addicts that have restrained her in all these like crazy extremes, and she chewed through the ropes and ran home to the Clears bus station, and she was kidnapped in the morning, and by afternoon she was at home watching herself on the news. And he was making the comparison, is like, what is 15 really? Because the reason why they let Amy off with like such a easy type of thing was like, oh, she's only 15. But then you take this person that's the same age, and it's like, oh, well, they were able to do the same thing. And that in itself, it could be just a microcosm. But then you take that same idea and you apply it to Game of Thrones, for example. Daenerys and Jon Snow were written as 15 and 16-year-olds. That is not a fantastical aspect. That thing is supposed to be a mirror. Well, it's a fantasy mirror reflection of the War of the Roses that happened in England. At that time, men were men at 15. Women were married by 14. That was a thing. You were popping out multiple kids by 15, 16 already. So it's just, again, it's just like the weird thing of how bringing a simple just joke up, a little thing of like, oh, can you imagine? It's the same thing that we do in writing. You just bring up like what you're doing with King Arthur's. Imagine if there was another Excalibur. It's just little things like that can just open up discourse to another realm. It's the reason we do this. I think it's the reason why all these things are beautiful. And it's the reason why I think humor is such a vital element in all writing. It's not based on genre or anything like that. I think comic relief is vital in anything and anything.
Agreed. I agree with you. Agreed. Yeah, it's you need to have the occasional laugh. you need to remember why you're doing this. You need to remember that this is a joy for you. This is real. Creating this world, seamlessly blending fantasy with reality. You need to understand how these characters interact with the world around them. It's, sometimes you need to have comic relief. I know I have it in my book, because you need to imagine what's happening in that scene. Are they laughing? Are they having, can they believe that they can't believe this is happening? So they laugh it off, right? There's definitely a need for it. I think it's important. You mentioned Game of Thrones. How many comic relief scenes are in Game of Thrones? Yes, it's this epic adventure about Westeros, but there's so many comedic moments of it that are probably not even recognized because everyone's just waiting for the next battle sequence, right? Because that's how it's marketed, right? So it's a valid point. Recognize that your genre your audience and genre, well, your audience actually needs the occasional laugh to keep them built up in this adventure in this far off world. They need the occasional break in what's happening. It gives their mind the ability to kind of, reevaluate what's happened and get ready for what's coming next. I was always taught that if you bombard someone with so much, they're not going to really absorb it like you intend them to absorb it. Break it up. Use your pacing. Be careful on how you present your information to them. Have an idea of what you want to happen and tell it, but be as real and as genuine as you can. And be funny and be comedic, because we all need a good laugh every now and then, especially right now.
Especially right now. Now, to kind of capstone the episode, capstone the recording.
Okay.
What do you define? What do you think is the essence of what you're trying to say with your book? Like I said, the allegory of the end, if you boil it down, is a miscommunication. What would you say is the boiling down of the Grandfather Chronicles? What is it that you're trying to convey to people? The moral of the story.
Okay, the moral of the story. The Grandfather Chronicles, I will sum it up for you in an easy sentence in 1 second here, but I'll tell you the Grandfather Chronicles is my vision of taking a legend and combine it with a real life scenario. So taking a reality that I know very well and blending it with a world that I have created around a legend and brought it together in this story where you see how real life characters react if they're caught up in a fantasy world where they're defined by the decisions they make, because their meaning is more than just day-to-day lives in our reality. They're connected to something much more significant in the world of Arthurian legend. And I'll leave you with my tagline for the book is, how far would you go for family?
And just to add to that, there's something that you said in the very beginning of the podcast, that you said there's certain things that happen with no reason, that they just happen.
That's right.
And I think, especially as authors, that we always trying to find, and again, it's just that the double-edged sword of a human brain is that we just are pattern oriented. We like to have, it's like XYZ, there's a reason, it just has to be like that. But I think, especially when you become a student of history, you realize that there is so much that is so significant that literally just happens.
That's right.
It just happens. And I think that really lends in to a very conscious understanding of what writing is. And I think it's why you are really an author that I think really should be looked at as the industry grows. And I just myself, I can not wait to see how you are in book 3. Just everything that you've already talked about. I think the best thing about, I think any true student of any industry is that they have to love learning more than they love the industry. You have to love the process. It's not just the end result. And I think you're kin with that. And again, I can't really say that this is like the golden approval. This is definitely not like an Oprah stamp by any degree. I would love it to be, but it's not. But I can honestly say I'm very excited to see your trajectory, just because, again, it's just a passion. It's the genuine love of what you're doing, and I really see that love in just how you speak about your crafts and your works and your project.
And it's thank you, Angel. It's very well said. I also have to say, for myself, I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for generous people like yourself, who are willing to take some time and fit me in to their craft, your show, bringing me on this show. You know, I'm just getting my words together here. I wouldn't be where I'm at without the tremendous support from the people around me, people who I've met on Twitter, people, as I mentioned yourself, who are giving me this opportunity to talk. You give me the opportunity to come on here and talk about something that I care so much about, something that I've invested a large part of my life in. This book defines my life because there are large elements of my childhood that are a part of this book. And being able to talk to you about that, breaking down the craft into how the ideas came about, where it's going, why did I decide to use my family as characters in this book? Why did I combine it with Arthurian legend? Breaking it all down and being able to talk to you about it, being able to share it on Twitter, share it on social media, being able to have something that I truly believe in, something that I believe is success defined, because I have this book in front of me here. Being able to have that and talk about it and being given the opportunity to talk about it is something that I will forever be grateful for. And I'll always remember this experience, Angel, because you gave me the first opportunity to talk about this on the air. And I can't thank you enough for that.
One of many, I promise.
Oh, you're too generous. You're too generous. But this has been an amazing experience. It's been something that I will talk about for a very long time, something that will be the conversation at dinner tonight. This conversation, rest assured, my friend, you're going to be talked about to a lot of different people, because this was a wonderful opportunity. You've allowed me to talk about things I haven't talked about in years. You've allowed me to express my thoughts on many different topics that all come back to the creativity and the craft of my book. So wholeheartedly, thank you. It was great.
Well, I can tell you the pleasure and the honor is all on this side. I just ramble. But really, it has been a complete honor to speak with you. And not only can I say that you are definitely a peer and a friend, and we're gonna continue our conversations, you know,
Absolutely.
on Twitter, on email, phone call, whatever it is. But I also will always have you back when you are ready to talk. It's the same thing that I leave any guest, the same thing I told PL, and I've been fortunate enough that he's been taking me up on that offer a couple of times. I will have you back, especially that we have a rapport, that we're comfortable.
Absolutely.
I honestly loved the sequel episodes more than I love the primary. Not that it takes away anything from the primary, but it's like, I don't think people realize how underprepared these episodes are. There's no pre-interview questionnaire. There's no anything. I don't speak to the people at length before the interview. This is really us getting to know each other. We just bought each other a beer at a bar, basically, and you just and you just heard it for two and whatever amount of time we're at now. You just heard that. Genuine conversation, nothing said before. Next time that we'll talk, we now have these reference points. It's like talking to an old friend now. We can go and sit down. I'm like I said, the first time that I talked with PL, phenomenal conversation. But the second time, oh my God, it was all laughs. It was all laughs. I feel like we couldn't stick to, we couldn't articulate a certain thing. We would just I would just start laughing at each other, just knowing each other's cues, and I cannot wait to have that for the next episode.
And that's what makes this great. And I love your reference about us having a beer, because it's like we are having a beer together here. And that's what makes such great conversation, being able to open up about who we are, what we want to do, where we want to go. The opportunity, the invite to even think about bringing me back on moves me. It's been an incredible experience. I'm just absolutely amazed by the support and the amount of great people I've met in such a short time. So thank you, Angel. Honestly, it's been great, and I can't wait to talk to you when the book is out there. when we can talk a little bit more about some of the stuff going on in the book. I know I'm kind of being hush-hush with it right now. I've spent so much time keeping it inside. I know family, relatives, and that are dying to read it, dying to see it. They're seeing elements of it, but it's coming soon. We're almost there, and I can't wait to talk about it more with you in the future. And just to have another beer with you and talk about our lives and where things are headed.
Oh, without a single doubt. I'm like
awesome.
I said, we are on the exact same page of it. I am on the exact same thing as like where you almost have to catch yourself because you start talking and rambling. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I just dropped like 3-4 spoilers of a book I haven't even written yet. Like, what am I thinking? Is it one of those things that you immediately have to like a joke I had in college is that I'm pretty mischievous. So like anytime I would do something and somebody would come by and be like, oh, who did this? I would all be like, oh, who's Angel? I don't know. It wasn't me. So like
find that guy and show him. Yeah, I don't know who he is.
Me? Who's Angel? I've never heard of that shit in my life. So I feel like that always kind of plays in my head anytime I start rambling too much, where I'll be like, wait, who said that? It wasn't me. Oh, it wasn't me that just spoiled like 3 books ahead. Nah. That was same face though. I can see the resemblance, but no, different guy. So what are the final thoughts to wrap this up? Final thoughts, and again, where can people find you? For the people listening?
The final thoughts, Angel, is excited, very, very excited. I'm proud of the craft that's been created. I can't say enough thanks to the team at Friesen Press, who helped take a Word document, a story, and turn it into a professional manuscript. I can't say enough about that. I really have to they've been incredible. They were a wonderful source of inspiration, and they were there for me every step of the way with any questions that I have. So I'm so incredibly proud of that product that we've created. I believe in the story, and I'm nervous, but it's a nervous excitement because I'm just so excited to get the book out there. But my final thoughts right now, where I stand today, are just incredibly grateful for the opportunity, incredibly grateful for the ability to be able to create this book, incredibly grateful for the ability to be able to professionally publish it and put it out in the world and have people be able to read something that I truly believe in. And my voice, my voice is all over this book. I've used so much inspiration and so much passion to create this story, and the idea that in a very short time it's going to be out in the world for people to see is absolutely incredible. And I am just so thankful to be able to have that opportunity. So the best place for people to find me right now, Angel, as we've mentioned all along, is on Twitter. Right now I'm on Twitter 2, 3, 4 hours a day. So it's SEAN Sean, my middle initial R, Bell, Bell. So it's Sean R. Bell, author. That's me right there. Wow, hard to, yeah, that's me on screen. So I'm on Twitter almost every day. I love engaging with people. I'm following people. I'm commenting all the time. When it comes to the book itself, The Grandfather Chronicles, you can see on my Twitter account, right at the very top, there's a pinned tweet there. It has the cover reveal for my book with a little trailer about what exactly is happening in the book. But the book itself will be available first at the Friesen Press bookstore. It will be available on Amazon.ca, Amazon.com, multiple book outlets. It will be available on all major book distribution outlets, only online right now with COVID-19 and the pandemic. Although I do have plans for physical book launches for the foreseeable future, it will be available online, both in hardcover, paper, softcover, and in the ebook version. So multiple ways to get it. Like I said, I interact every day on Twitter. You can also visit www.thegrandfatherchronicles.com. There's my website right there. I'm on there every day now, getting it ready. I'm adding elements all the time to it. So there's always new things that are happening, new sort of media elements that I'll be adding. The website itself is a great resource, though, to just come in and have a look at what the book's all about. But anyway, I'm thrilled. And lastly, I will be on Facebook and Instagram as well. Those are great kind of platforms where I'll be doing different interactive live events. I'll be doing character profiles, talking about different elements of the book. More so once the book is released. Once the book is out and it's out there and people are reading it, and I start to see some reviews come in, I'll start to talk a little bit more about where the characters came from, where the origins came from, just to give people more of an idea of the backstory of how the characters were created. So that's all planned. Those will all be elements that will be easily accessible through the website and through the different social media platforms. So it's going to be a journey. So come experience that journey with me.
I love that. I love that. And for anybody listening, if you're not doing it out of spite, well, if you're not doing it out of love, do it out of spite. You do whatever you got to do. Follow the author, Sean Bell, The Grandfather Chronicles, coming soon. Make sure to mark your calendars. It is going to be worth the wait. You do what you have to do in order to support the author, the industry. With a coming tide, with the rising of tide, all the boats lift. I butchered that analogy, but I'm telling you it's the same shit. Whatever you get the point. As you know, one of us grows, we all grow. It's just how it goes. We're all in this together. So, Sean, it has been a complete honor. Thank you again for coming on. And truly, it really, I'm touched that you were able to come on and have such a great conversation with me, and just be able to just let yourself talk and just being able to give me your honest opinion on things. There's nothing better than seeing true passion ooze and emanate out of a person. I really saw that today.
Angel, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to do it again.
Yes, definitely. So this is the end of the podcast. A.R.'s Tales, aka the A.R.T podcast. I've been A.R. Abad. This has been Sean Bell. Thank you again, and catch us on Friday when we have our next group cast, and on next Monday when we have our next author interview. Check us out, and peace out, ladies and gentlemen.